Sometime in the early 90s, I want to say 1993, my family was visiting my uncle in Arizona where he lived. And one of the nice things about Arizona is that it's a very dry climate. So where my uncle lived, the family had lived on that place for many, many decades, and many, many decades worth of stuff was still on the property in very dusty, but overall remarkably well-preserved shape because of the dry climate on east side of the state, not Phoenix or not any of the really famous super hot places, but on the eastern side of the state. And when I was about 10, so 1993, my uncle pulled out a couple boxes full of old records, so 78s, 78 RPM records, and very, very interestingly, some records that were homemade. So just like, you know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you might have had a portable tape recorder, pop a cassette tape in, you hit record, you talk into a microphone, and it would record onto tape. That's something we're all pretty familiar with. Even something that might record onto CDs. This was a machine that looked like, it wasn't actually as big as I had thought when I looked it up. It was a machine that you could close up and carry around. So a portable machine that had two arms on the turntable, one for playing and one for cutting. And so what you did is there was a microphone and you set this thing up and you could get the blank record spinning and put the cutting lathe onto the record, talk into the microphone, and it would actually cut the record of your voice into the wax as you spoke. Very, very fancy stuff. Pretty impressive to me. But so I was 10 years old, and we get these records that basically come in two varieties. So the later ones that were recorded by my family were actually on vinyl. So these are like plastic discs that look and feel much more like a traditional LP record, except very, very thin and flexible. The older kind are literally cardboard, like discs of paper, although they do feel about as rigid as the plastic ones, but cardboard with a coating of wax over the top. So incredibly fragile. This is another example, even thinner cardboard paper with a wax coating. And you can just kind of see how the grooves on this record are just shredded. They're just cracked and crackled from age. This record is like 80 years old. So, you know, it's no wonder the shape that it's in. And God knows how many times it had been played over the years. But I'm 10 years old. It's the early 90s. We bring these records home and play them on our you know, pretty basic budget, run-of-the-mill home turntable stereo. They record in 78. They include some amazing recordings, like my dad talking when he was 4 years old. So 1942, when he was 4 years old, talking to his father, my grandfather, who died in 1949. 1949, which was 34 years before I was even born. And no chance in ever meeting this guy, let alone hearing his voice. But these decades old records still existed in a shed in Arizona. Bring it home, and I remember my mom and dad playing these things. And you can hear voices. There's tones of voices, but you can't make out anything they're saying because the turntable equipment was not that great to begin with, and the surfaces of these records are just shredded. So somewhere under the wall of static and hiss and noise are voices, and those voices are important, fascinating voices from my family history, but good luck making out anything they were saying. I inherited, asked to have the records at some point, and I've been dragging them around ever since. And I don't play them just for the sake of playing them, but I have tried to play them a handful of times over the past, say, 20 years to try to record them onto another medium so I could preserve them and even try to restore them. So recording them, the last serious effort I made to record them was probably about 10 years ago, recorded directly onto my computer. And the turntable that I used was not great quality. And I used the Audacity program, the free, workhorse audio editing program, Audacity, to try to clean the recordings up. And the best that I could do was sort of push or pull all of the static somewhere into the background, which made a really sort of digital, I don't know, a weird sound. It pulls the voices out a little bit. You can hear them a little bit better, but to me, it always kind of sounded like if you were inside a human body and you were listening to the conversation happening outside the human body. That's what my Audacity restorations ended up sounding like. So still, not great, better than it was. You can hear tones of voices. Some words came through pretty clearly, but for the most part, just a bunch of garbled nonsense sounds. Not only that, but the sheer mental and audio fatigue of listening to the distorted recordings. It was not fun. It was not, for all the historic interest in potentially hearing the conversations and hearing the voices, just the sheer exhaustive work of your ears and your brain to have to try to decipher what you were hearing. It just was unpleasant. So anyway, I put the records back in the box. I've had the box in a closet for the last 10 years or so. And earlier this year, the Beatles released, talk about tremendous segue, but it will make sense, I promise. So earlier this year, the Beatles released their final recording, Now and Then, which, thanks to the advent of advanced AI technology, they were able to salvage the demo recording that John Lennon made, where he was playing in his apartment, playing the piano and singing. And previously, like in the 90s, when they first worked on the anthology recordings, there was no way at that time to separate the voice from the piano with the technology that they had. Kind of like me using Audacity to try to restore my recordings. But through the magic of AI, they were able to remove the piano and isolate John Lennon's voice, and it became something usable, and it led to the Beatles being able to create this final recording and finally finish it. So I thought, that's really interesting. But I'm a little slow on the uptake, so it took me a few months, and then just a few weeks ago, it dawned on me, wow, maybe there's some way that I can use that technology for my home recordings. And I wonder if that's even available to the general public. So I looked into it, and it is. There's some AI technology available for the general public, and when it comes to audio recordings and voice isolation. I saw a couple of downloadable suites of things that were fairly expensive. There's a website called Lalal, Lall.ai, or I've heard people pronounce it Lalale, which is kind of pretty, but Lalal.ai, which is actually the simplest, most straightforward one to use. And you can upload your recordings, and for free, you can hear a preview. You can't download it, but it can at least let you know that you're on the right track. So I took one of my old rips off of the records, and I put it into Lalal.ai, and it processed it, and I hit play on the sample, and not even kidding, like magic, the noise was gone and the voices came forward. I was very, it was a very emotional moment to hear my grandfather's voice, boom, like straight through the speakers, like he was right there. And so I immediately set about, I used my now turntable, my fancy Technics table with a nice cartridge, which I probably did irreparable damage to the cartridge by working through this process. But I realized, I mean, of all the records I own, there's no records that are more important than these records. So what I did was the records were recorded and they play at 78. Well, my Technics turntable doesn't have a 78 setting. It has 33 and 45. So I recorded them very slowly at 33. So all I could hear was like really deep sounds. But using my very fine tip needle and recording at 33, the records have a tendency to, the push needles that jump right out of the grooves, but recording them slowly and with a fine tip needle, the records actually, for the most part, recorded all the way through, which was great. So it gave me complete recordings when I had, and I recorded them onto CD with my CD recorder. So I had them digitally, and then I took the digital files and I used Audacity. I used Audacity to change the speed from 33 to 78. So then I had true representations, warts and all, static and all, of the recordings at the proper speed. And using my current turntable, the recording quality was far and above anything I'd been able to accomplish before. So I had all the rips, I had all the files, and I was seriously considering AI, but I kept looking, and I found out that there's a freeware program called Ultimate Vocal Remover 5, or UVR5, which takes a little bit, there's a bit of a learning curve with it, but it's free, and you can upload your files and you can tinker with the settings and run it through these algorithms which meet basically the same end as AI. It takes longer. is simpler, but UVR5 is free. So anyway, I had my rips and I put the files one at a time in UVR5, and I processed them. And the first one I did was the one I had mentioned earlier of my dad when he was 4 talking to my grandfather in 1942. And the final product, absolutely breathtaking, just absolutely amazing. And I'm gonna do more videos of the recordings, the final restored recordings. But for the purposes of this video, which has already gone farther or longer than I had probably hoped or anticipated, I want to do a before and after demonstration of what UVR5 is capable of. So I'm going to move over to my computer and I'm going to demonstrate the software. I'm going to demonstrate the settings that I used to do the restorations and kind of talk about that, and then finally do the before and after demonstration. So I will be right back. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is go to ultimatevocalremover.com, and the website for the program, download UVR, and that will obviously download the program to your computer. It is fairly substantial in size. I believe it is a gigabyte or more, which was a little bit unusual at first, but you know, I had the space, that's not a problem. So I downloaded it and I installed it, but the first step is to go to ultimatevocalremover.com. Then once you have the program installed, this is what it looks like. And there are a number of options. So select input. That is where you can look for the file on your computer. Select output. Obviously, it's where you want the file to go when it's done. I am currently in the process of doing a restoration. I'm at 90%. So I don't want to stop this one right now, but I don't think I'll be able, I don't think I'll have to. So choose process method. There's a number of individual structures, frameworks that are here. Ensemble mode, you can actually pick multiple, or you can pick ones from all of the individual ones, and it will run through them all, which does make it take quite a while, especially on my old computer. Main stem pairs, so you can choose like if you want to isolate the drums, bass, four stem ensemble, multi-stem, vocals, instrumental. So I always choose vocals and instrumental because I want to isolate the vocals, and this is how I've been able to do that. Ensemble algorithm, you can select, so max spec slash min spec. Max spec is vocals, min spec instrumental. So I want the maximum capacity devoted to vocals, minimum to instrumental. You can do max spec if you want them both to be equally prioritized, min spec, max spec, like that. But then here I select to save only the vocals. So this max spec vocals only gives me only the vocals to choose from. And I have gone in and downloaded a number of additional models. And what I've been doing, what I feel pretty satisfied with, is I've been running ensemble mode with 3 models. So there's MDX Net Kim Vocal 1, MDX Net, MDX 23C Inst Voc HQ, and MDX Net UVR MDX Net Voc FT. These all seem to be, I downloaded all the vocal related ones that I could find, and I've been running these 3. I don't have any special capacity or power in my computer. So particularly Kim Vocal 1 takes hours. Each one of these recordings is between 2 and 4 minutes. And some of them have taken the better part of a day to get through. But, these recordings are 80 years old, and it's not like I don't have the time. So at first I was discouraged because I want instant gratification, but I'm almost through all the recordings, and it's worked out just fine.
Hey, you got that, Bobby? Hey, together. Who am I? Why did Daddy give Bobby a nickel? How are you gonna buy it, Bobby? Hey. Hey, you got that, Bobby? Hey, together. Who am I? Why did Daddy give Bobby a nickel? How are you gonna buy it, Bobby? Hey. What's your name? Harold what? That's what I was named. Why were you named Harold, really? Because you were little? No. So, how did you get over here to the studio? Flew the cool car. What's your name? Harold. Harold what? Harold. That's what I was named. Why were you named Harold, really? Because you were little? No. So, how did you get over here to the studio? Flew the cool car. This is Cation PDQ, Los Gatos. We now have a guest artist, Miss Shirley Bellamy of Oakland, age 12, who will sing It Had to Be You.
It had to be you, it had to be you. I wandered around and finally found somebody who...
This is Cation PDQ, Los Gatos. We now have a guest artist, Miss Shirley Bellamy of Oakland, age 12, who will sing It Had to Be You.
It had to be you, it had to be you.